And being a small part of media, I promised myself once I learned more about the thing, and I run into people and I meet people like you, and I realized I wasn't alone. And the groundswell of new media is really doing a good job. I think not a great job, but a good job of holding these people. I want to ask you a little bit about Assange. We don't talk too much about him on this program, and I almost want to make sure I do. Now, I know you know who Bill Binney is and Thomas Drake. These guys were NSA whistleblowers way before we heard of an Edward Snowden. In fact, I had Binney on the old DC show way back in the day. So you're very familiar with these type of people. And back when Assange and WikiLeaks were outing the war crimes and the torture of the Bush administration, the Democrats loved Assange. They loved him. They were all about him. And by the way, everything WikiLeaks has ever published is 100% accurate. They've never, ever, ever been wrong. But let's fast forward now. Now, Assange is going after the Dems and how they cheated Bernie and how it wasn't the Russians, it was an actual download. And, of course, that could have something to do with Seth Rich and his murder. And now it seems that Assange doesn't have a friend. The right doesn't like him anymore, and now the left doesn't like him anymore. And it seems like the one man, like the Pentagon Papers, did the same thing way back in the 70s. It was actual documents proving total BS about half of the Vietnam War, and all Assange has ever done is he did the same thing. Who was the guy? He escapes my mind from the 70s.
Ellsberg?
The Pentagon Papers.
Daniel Ellsberg.
Yeah, Daniel Ellsberg. Well, Assange is a new version of that, and they're going after him under the Espionage Act. There's a great video out there, by the way. I saw Jimmy Dore asking one of the tools at MSNBC about, do you think a man who's just putting knowledge out there, and he's literally speaking truth to power, and now it started with Obama. By the way, yeah, Assange is in prison, and he's being mentally and physically tortured. I don't know about physical, but they are mentally breaking this man down. But it didn't start with Trump. It started with Obama, and I think Assange is out there spinning in the wind. He seems to be an afterthought on social media. I'm done talking about him. Now you give me your version.
Well, yeah, no, actually, so every other week I join the Action for Assange Vigil, including last night, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, where Taylor, Hudak, Christy Dopp, Steve, and Andrew put on this vigil to let people know what's going on with the Assange case, because there were a lot of developments this week. For instance, Belmarsh is saying they no longer are going to have him under 23 hours of solitary confinement. Whether that's real or not, I don't know. But the fact that he was under 23 hours of solitary confinement in a prison, that he's not being charged with anything other than this extradition, which is completely illegal under the Espionage Act, there is no reason to hold Assange. There's no bail jumping reason. There's no reason with that fake Swedish accusation of rape, which has completely gone away, which no charges were ever filed ever. But we did learn in a court hearing this week that over the last 3+ weeks, Assange has had access to his legal material and lawyers for less than 2 hours. How are you supposed to mount a defense against what's essentially going to be a show trial, a military tribunal, if you can't even see what you're being falsely charged with? And Ledge, there's a big show trial going on right now that the vast majority of the United States has no interest in, knows nothing about, and it ain't impeachment, brother, although that's another show trial. Right now, 19+ years later, we have the trial of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the supposed mastermind of 9/11, and no one is talking about this whatsoever. First of all, the fact it took 19 years to do it. Second of all, that we're only going to get limited information from this thing. And third, we're endorsing a military tribunal.
Yeah, that's right there. Where's the actual 1/3 of our government? The judicial system needs to do that. It shouldn't be done under the cloak of the military. I couldn't agree with you more. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's completely against the Constitution.
Well,
Absolutely.
If you look at Assange himself, who they've already said is not going to be afforded First Amendment rights, what are we actually treating him like? We're treating him a lot like Manuel Noriega. Okay, you got to understand that Bill Barr wrote up the paperwork prior to becoming the Attorney General under George H.W. Bush on how they could extradite, go into Noriega's country, grab him, charge him, find him guilty, imprison him, and then when his prison sentence was up, just let him rot in prison till he died. That's where we're at in this country, and most people have no idea about what I just said. And how dare Noriega be our ally and asset, and then when he started to get the screw job, say that he was going to out people like the Central Intelligence Agency and the Bushes, and look what happened to him. He was painted as the world's worst dictator after he was our ally, and he rotted in a basically a torture center until he died.
Yeah, I remember that. I was not into I thought, I was a surface level politics guy. I'd read USA Today, and I think I knew everything that was going on, and I do remember. And I've always said this, there are plenty of dictators in the world, and they do business with the United States every day, and we don't worry about them. It's when we bring them up is when they're not playing the game anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, that's when they go, oh, by the way,
stay under the radar for your safety.
Exactly. Yeah. If you want to stay alive, Saddam Hussein, if you want to stay alive, Muammar Gaddafi, you better do what you're told. And the moment you don't, you end up exactly like Noriega. Well put. Listen, I don't know much about this peace process. I do know that Netanyahu and Trump met. Honestly, I haven't really been following it up to this point. So kind of fill us in on what they've proposed and in your opinion, what's right or wrong about it.
Yeah, the problem is all we're getting are smiles, handshakes, and surface-level politics in the Middle East when it comes to Israel. Most people have no idea the intricacies of Middle Eastern or Eurasian geopolitics whatsoever. They don't understand our Anglo-American Saudi-Israeli alliance. And unfortunately, this administration that said it was going to drain the swamp, get us out of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, the Middle East in general, will not be able to do so when they stand next to Netanyahu, a man who is rife with corruption in his own country, who has been challenged in his two most recent elections, who has currently been indicted for corruption, by the way, if I didn't mention that. When he stands up there,
I knew that part. Yeah,
but Jason, he still got elected, though, right?
Well, again,
they're saying there was election meddling in the last two elections. Those are the charges.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's part. Well, he had corruption charges in the indictments prior to that, and the last two elections have been razor thin, and there's been talks of corruption there. I don't think there's been any indictments. But when you have a guy that stands up there next to Trump and says there has been no greater friend to Israel as a president than him, who has given Israel the Golan Heights region when no other nation state even close to recognizes that, when you're giving them a blank check for war, essentially, and when you got a guy like Netanyahu who says Israel isn't for everybody and promotes an ethno-state, there is no path to peace. It is a joke. It is always going to be Israel and Saudi Arabia first in the Middle East. And again, that was shown right away in his presidency after he did tough talk with Saudi Arabia and then cut a $400+ billion arms deal with them in the same breath. So, even though Congress
said no, Trump cut that brand new military deal with the Saudis. Yes, correct. Yeah.
100%. And remember, it's Saudi Arabia who we're in the war business with against Yemen that both our Congress and our Senate voted to get us out of. And, Trump took that little deep state pen and vetoed that quick.
Yeah, it's more of a proxy war for the United States. We're supplying, we're not, our pilots aren't flying the bombers, but we are supplying the planes and the bombs.
And we're choosing the targets.
And that's another story that's going under the radar for many, many months, is the genocide in Yemen. It's nothing to joke about. They're a country. They have their own sovereignty, and they are slowly being bombed out of existence.
Yes, and not only that, Ledge, on top of the warfare, what's it causing? It's causing a humanitarian crisis where women and children are starving, on top of the death and destruction caused by our drone bombs and the targets that we're picking out. The aftermath is as if not more horrendous.
I don't remember seeing anything on any mainstream news outlet even mentioning Yemen in the last 6 months to a year. It is literally a non-story in the mainstream media. Yet on the other side, we'll hear about Syria certainly, and Libya's kind of quieted down now that we've gotten our way there. But the Yemen crisis is what many people call it. Is again, the mainstream media has an agenda. What they tell you versus what they're not telling you. And it's a sad story for sure.
So we're going in there to Yemen.
We're in Yemen as advisors, and almost like.
And is that because there are radicals? There are people that we're looking for that are.
No, the Saudis are at war with the Yemenis or whatever. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. But we're supplying the tech, like maybe a spotter.
Right.
We're not officially bombing them. We're not officially in that war. That's why I call it a proxy war, where the Saudis are kind of like doing the bidding of what the United States and Israel want there. And it's
all about control.
Well, a lot of it does get into the religious factions too. I mean, it's not just always political or military bases or oil. A lot of it is tribal, and that goes back, thousands of years for sure. Anything else on your mind, bro, before we cut you loose?
I just want to mention Dershowitz and impeachment really quick.
Sure.
Obviously, I don't think that this president is going to be thrown out of office. I don't agree with this impeachment whatsoever. And I'm finding myself having to defend Alan Dershowitz when he goes on The View and he's attacked on these points of impeachment. But probably the most concerning thing of that interview was the fact that when he was asked about whether or not the Epstein allegations got in the way of him being a lawyer for Trump, he said, well, the first thing I said to Donald Trump, the first thing, Ledges, I had nothing to do with any of these allegations regarding Epstein. And obviously, I do not believe it, and I think the president should have had a lot better judgment than hiring Alan Dershowitz to defend him, a guy that said he was running on draining the swamp, who had mentioned Epstein and his connections to Clinton and to Sean Hannity on the run to the 2016 election. Hiring Dershowitz should be a huge slap in the face to his base, but it is not. Because unfortunately, his MAGA head base is completely brainwashed to ride that Trump train into oblivion, Ledge.
Come on, ride the train. Ride the Trump train. Yeah,
he's a lawyer.
Well, but you have to understand. The first data dump was the 10,000 pages that came out the day before Epstein's
2,000
suicide. Yes. And some of it was redacted, but I know it was the governor of New Mexico, right? Bill Richardson?
Richardson, yep.
Yep, and Dershowitz's name is also named in that document, correct?
Dershowitz is throughout those documents because a lot of the testimony of Alan Dershowitz through depositions had been made available previously. Some of the names that you didn't have in there, other than Dershowitz, who had already been named, were Glenn Dubin, like you said, Richardson, George Mitchell, and others. But apparently, those 2,000 pages, a lot of that information was already out. This 10,000-page dump is supposed to have over 1,000 names, according to Virginia Roberts and her lawyer, Bradley Edwards.
When you say 1,000 names, I find that number almost too large. Like, let's say you have 40 women that come forward, and they're all going to be testify or be depositioned, and they're going to name 5 or 6 or 8 names that actually sexually abused them. How do you get 10,000 names?
That's a great question, but you know what? Let's talk about Dershowitz for one more second outside of Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Dershowitz has been named by Maria Farmer, who is that initial 96 whistleblower, as somebody who was in and out of Epstein's New York mansion, where he had underage models upstairs who were called nubiles and being procured by Ghislaine Maxwell and her network with Leslie Groff and Sarah Palin, etc. Now, on top of that, okay, you have Sarah Ronsom, who's another one of these women who says that she had a threesome with Dershowitz. Now, she was overage at the time, but this puts Dershowitz in the mix with Epstein, having sex with these trafficked women, and he's denied all of it. If you have 30, 40, 50, 100 victims, and they have given eyewitness testimony, and that's part of it. In other words, part of Virginia Giuffre Roberts' lawsuit are all these depositions that women gave to either law enforcement or separate courthouses, and they were, abused by 10, 15 other people. I think it's very possible we could see hundreds and even up to 1,000 names.
Okay, all right. You always bring it. You know what the hell you're talking about. I think I know some stuff, and then I talk to this guy, and I'm like, man,
really.
just off the top of his head, he's like ripping off.
And the rest of us are going, oh, my God.
Yeah, well, there's the truth that you get on your TV, and then there's the actual truth, and there's always going to be a big chasm between it. Bro, give us all the social media sites, and again, you're a good filmmaker. I'm glad you're out there. You got to feed the beast that's inside you, bro. That's great. Give all the information to our listeners where they can find you and some of your films and so on.
Sure. So I'm doing it 3 to 7 times a day over on youtube.com/InfoWarrior. Make sure you go over there. Subscribe. Like Ledge just said, I am a documentary filmmaker. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled, Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture are all available for free on my YouTube channel in the documentaries playlist section. On top of that, and I have just joined the Rockfin Network, ROKFIN.com/Jason Burmis, where I am doing 5 exclusive videos a week you can only get at Rockfin for subscribers. If you pay $9.99 a month there, Ledge, you not only get my bonus material, but you also get like MMA bonus material from Ben Askren, Chael Sonnen, other great people in alternative media like Ron Placone, Graham Elwood, and others. This is the new network that I'm going to be building upon in case YouTube cuts my throat all the way. So if you want to support me, you can support me there.
You mean when?
Well,
not if.
Yeah.
We'll see. I hope they don't kick me off the platform.
Yeah.
Well, I watch you almost every day. Sometimes I let a couple of your films or your 10, 20 minutes, usually average what? Between 10 and 15 minutes on each little
unless
rant.
I'm doing like an interview or I'm doing an Ask Me Anything, I try to keep it pretty compact.
You got it.
Yep.
All right, man.
Keep
at it. We'll talk to you next week, and thank you for your contributions, my buddy.
Thank you, guys. God bless.